I love that animation. That's because it's the best football show. I'm Brian Baldinger. That's Mark Schlereth. We get together once a week. We talk about games and fundamentals and old days and all that kind of good stuff. We just talk football. We don't get too fancy around here. By the way, you can find Stink all over the place. Mark can kind of tell you where you can find you at Fox Sports, wherever. I'm at Baldy NFL. You can find this podcast here wherever you download your podcast. It's a free Audacy podcast. Like it, subscribe to it. Mark, good afternoon to you. Friday before Wildcard Weekend. I'm in Orlando here, Mark. I'm getting ready to announce the Hula Bowl tomorrow. I was out there on the practice field today. They just had a walkthrough. Mike Tice is coaching the offense line on one side. Jay Hayes. I mean, I'm just there, go out there and kind of shooting the breeze with the guys. And I said, so what do you think, guys? They had 3 days of in-pads practice, kind of some one-on-ones, inside drill, all the basic stuff. And they said this, the guy's hands stink. I go, really? I go, no kidding. He goes, so anyways, Mike's son-in-law, his son's married to his daughter. He coaches at Kansas. Okay. So he got to practice at Kansas this year, and he was telling me, this is kind of hard to believe, honestly, Mark, but I know what world we're in. He goes, they literally have no individual drills. They kind of go through stretch and all that stuff, warm up, and they get into installation, and like literally all the things that we spent most of our time doing, individual drills, it's like eliminated. And so you go, okay, well, why is the fundamentals so bad across the board? You go, well, they don't even make time for it in college.
Yeah.
So they never learn it. They never learn how to pass stunts, really, or just how to jam guys, or, guide with one hand, kill with another hand. They don't spend any time with this stuff. And so we sit there and we grind the tape and we go, man, this is really lousy. And I go, and you say the same thing to yourself. And you go, well, where's the blame? How does this get to this point right now?
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm at a NFL team every weekend. Every Friday I'm at an NFL practice. And what I see on film and the way it doesn't translate, or the lack of translation from the practice field to the film, so many times, especially in the college game, all they're working on is walkthrough. Yeah. Walkthrough installation stuff to make sure that nobody screws up.
Right.
And so, at some point, it's got to be, I always told my kid this when my kid was going to play professional baseball, just because you play a pro sport doesn't make you a professional.
Right.
It's your responsibility to be a professional. And, I was a professional freaking football player, man. I didn't make mistakes because I studied it. But those techniques, I could work right now and you could play any position in any sport if you've got great hands and great feet. And I had great feet and I had unbelievable hands. And that's what it takes to play in the National Football League. And the lack of strike, the lack of punch, the lack of basically snapping a guy off and to pick up a stunt, all those things, they're lost arts in the NFL today. And, obviously it comes from the college game. By the way, tell Mike Tice, who was my teammate with the Washington Redskins, and tell Jay Hayes, his brother Jonathan is at the University of Idaho, University of Idaho guy. So Jonathan and I are tight, and Jay and I obviously know each other. But please give those guys my best, because those are a couple of blasts from the past, and it's always good to hear those names.
It's interesting you use that phrase, Mark, snap it off. Actually, me and Mike Tice were talking about that today, because if I'm a left guard and I'm working with my left tackle and they want to run a TE stunt and that tackle's driving right there and he's trying to get that end free, my job as a guard was to violently make sure I pass that guy to my tackle. It was a violent, you read the stunt, it was a violent push. And I mean, it's supposed to be violent. The hands have to be violent. And you're talking about great hands. That's great hands. And the same thing on an ET stunt. That tackle's got to get that end on that flash stunt, whether he's flat or whether he's driving, whatever it is, he's got to get him over to me. And usually if you saw that stuff off early in the game, you don't see it anymore, right?
Right.
So, just that. I look for that in the NFL. And it's as big and strong as some of these kids are, they keep getting bigger and bigger. I just don't see the violence in that particular part of the game.
I cannot tell you how many times I snapped off a tackle end and I snapped the tackle so hard that he ran into the end, and they're both looking at each other like, what the hell happened? Collision. And one of the things I always tell people when I'm consulting with them now, and I've consulted with a bunch of different NFL teams, is the way you can figure that out is when a guy takes an unnatural path, he's no longer, and his eyes aren't on you. He's not pass rushing you anymore.
You read it like this.
Right. He's reading, he's trying to pick the tackle, and what ends up happening is his eyes go like this and his shoulder goes like this. And that shoulder, right, that is your target. So now all of a sudden he does that, boom, I want to hit that shoulder and send him into next week, right? And I can't tell you, like I'm telling you, Baldy, I had knocked so many dudes right into defensive ends, and it's done. It's over.
Yeah, it's over.
They stopped it, and they're literally talking to each other like, what the hell happened? Right?
I know.
And so it's one of those things. It's really interesting, and it is a lost art. And I get what's happening in the NFL. And I call it the 80-20 rule. 80% of the guys make 20% of the guys, make 80% of the money. Right. And so what you do is, you pay your defensive end, you pay your quarterback, you pay your defensive tackle, you pay your elite corner, you pay your wide receiver, right? Those guys get paid through the nose. And then the 80% of us that's left over are making 20% of the money. And so where they save money, especially, and this doesn't make any sense to me, where they save money is, okay, every backup we have as offensive lineman is a young guy that's making a minimum wage, and we're saving money there so we can pay the other guys. And I'm like, wait a minute now. You're trying to protect a $200+ million asset that plays quarterback, and one dude goes down, and you're bringing in a guy that can't block Johnny Bier. Like, he's awful, right? He shouldn't be in the NFL. And yet those are the guys we're keeping. It just is, it's so counterintuitive to me. And the game has become that way to a degree because these superstars are making so much money.
So it's pretty interesting today. So, there was heavily, a lot of scouts, whether, these guys know what they're looking at or not, but it was a good turnout. But so it's interesting. We had this kid from Michigan. He's actually a pretty good player. This kid, Josh Freeby. He's a classic Michigan kid. Thick leg, 6'3", 320. He's never played center before. So he's been a guard. So we lose it. They lose the center in practice. Tice goes to the kid, lay lip. I got to get you in at center. Do you mind? He goes, no, I'd love to. I'd love to show these scouts that. He goes, I've never snapped in my life, but I'll work on it. And I'll get the shotgun back there. But I think, the more I can. So, you get a kid like that attitude. Like, I've never played center. I might screw up, but, it's good to see me on tape. Maybe that's the way I make this team or make a roster next year is just show some versatility. And even though I've never done it before, the kid didn't have any fear jumping in there. I saw him working on shotgun snaps all morning today. So I'm going to kind of pop the kid during the broadcast tomorrow, give him some kudos for that.
That's awesome. Yeah. The more you can do, and this really started actually, Baldy. I don't know how many guys you dressed, as an offensive line when you were playing, but in my first years in Washington, we always dressed 8 or 9 guys, right? So when I got to Denver, Mike Shanahan was like, no, I only want to dress 7 guys. So I want to keep an extra linebacker to run down on special teams, maybe an extra safety, whatever the case may be. And so he manipulated the roster that way. So what we ended up doing, we really started this in Denver. Mike Shanahan started this. We had one swing tackle that could play both right and left. Right. And we had one guy inside that could back up. It was Dave Diaz-Infante, one of my dear friends.
Yeah,
so Dave Diaz-Infante could play left guard, center, and right guard. And that's how we swung. So it was like, hey, man, don't get hurt. Nobody can get hurt in this game. We're only dressed in 7. And so for all those years that I played in Denver, 6 years for Mike Shanahan and the Denver Broncos, we dressed 7 dudes. That's what we did. And that value of understanding multiple positions. And then the other thing for me was always understanding and having a global perspective of what we're doing as a football team, right? Yeah. So as an offensive line and an offensive lineman, if you understand, hey, man, I play left guard, but I can play center. And I came into the league as a center, but I know what my left tackle is supposed to do, and I know what my right guard is supposed to do, and I know what my left guard or right tackle is supposed to do. I know what the backs are doing. I used to have a standing 5:15 a.m. meeting in the training room. I always came in. I was the first guy in the building. I always came in at 5 o'clock, and Alex Gibbs would come down. We'd have coffee, the legendary Alex Gibbs, and we'd go through like game plan meeting at 5:15 a.m. And, I'd have ice on my knees or doing whatever I was doing. And it was always one of those things. Okay, what footwork would you use if you were the right tackle? What hand placement would you use here? Hey, man, we're putting in this new play. It's an adjunct to what we do in the zone game, right? So we're such a good tight zone team. We want to use the the backside of that. We want to marry that to the power game. And so how would you set this up? And so we go through it. Hey, if it's a one technique, if it's a two-eye technique, if it's two technique, if it's three technique, we go through the whole scheme, right? And we would talk about those things. And I just think it's so important, especially with young players, that they are so inundated with here's what we do, here's what we're going to run, here's all these plays we're going to run, that they don't get to work on that individual stuff and really work on the timing and the footwork. I could get in a stance right now, and I could come off the ball as sure as shit, and I could hit every step that I wanted to take. And one of the things I talk to young kids about is the rhythm of your feet in what you're doing. So when I'm coming off the ball, and let's say we're running 19 handoff or 18 handoff, man, I know what my feet should sound like, when my feet in contact. So I always had this rhythm in my head, okay, here's what my feet should sound like. So on this play, that's what my feet should sound like coming off the ball. And on that second one, that's where I should be making contact. And that's where my hands and my head should be in unison with that second step down, so I can create, ankle over knee over hip, so I can create this unbelievable lift from here to here. Because I always tell people, the coach would say to you, hey, man, you got to stay lower on this. And I'd be like, hey, no shit, Sherlock. I got impaled. I get that I need to stay lower. Yeah. What's the technique to stay lower? Because leverage is created. If you're 6'4" and I'm 6'4" or 6'3", and we come off, we're going to hit heads, right? So how can I get that energy, this energy, from stopping here? How can I get your energy to go through the roof and my energy to do this? And so it's footwork that comes from your hips through your hands, and you don't strike out, you strike up. And when you get that upward motion, that's when you can take a guy off the ball. And all that ties in. It all starts with your feet, and it goes, like I said, through your ankles, through your knees, through your hips, all the way through your low back, and you strike out like a freaking cobra, right? And just wow. Yeah. And but it's all about feet and strike. And so many people just want to touch, man, I'm not when I'm on a football field, I'm not trying to faith heal you, right? I'm not laying hands on you and praying in the name of Jesus, right? When I'm on a football field, and listen, man, I'm born again. I love Jesus. I'm in. But when I'm on a football field, I am trying to rip your freaking head off. I am literally trying to hurt you. And that's one of the things you have to understand about this game, and how you create leverage. So anyhow, I've spoken enough on this, but it gets me fired up, man.
Well, since you played in Denver, I don't think we need to go through all these games here, Mark. But if you want to take one game here on Sunday afternoon at 1:00, Denver at Buffalo. I don't know if you've seen either one of these teams this year, Mark. I've used you. I know.
Well, I've watched and broken down a bunch of Denver games, and I've watched a few. I haven't really broken down Buffalo games, but I've watched the two teams, and especially Denver. So I've got a good feel for them.
Well, Aaron Kromer is the offensive line coach in Buffalo. I have a lot of respect for Aaron Kromer. Everywhere he's gone, whether it's the Rams, New Orleans, Chicago, now in Buffalo the last 3 or 4 years, his team's improved. Now, they've been forcing Denver too here, Mark. Both teams have largely started all 5 guys all year. I mean, Quinn Miners is lined up, and he's played almost every snap, I think, at right guard. They've had that. Both teams have kind of had that luxury. They really haven't had to go to the depth. But when I watch Buffalo, they run a lot of tackle trap. It's their signature play. They pull especially with teams that are playing reduced front, they pull the tackle, the guard stays on the backside, the tackle pulls the lead. And whether you're running a tackle trap right now in Buffalo, or you're running counter tray with Philly, or counter tray with a guard and a tight end, however you're doing in Tampa, I feel like because the emphasis on pass rushers has been so great that we don't see Michael Strahans or Reggie Whites or anybody like that anymore. We see 200 250-pound defensive ends. And I just feel like the day is coming here, Mark, where you're just going to keep blasting these guys with these counter trays. You're going to get, you're going to get Mekhi Becton, this week going up, against Joe Tryon in Tampa at 255 pounds. And we're just seeing like how long you can take those blasts, because that's what some of these teams are doing over and over again right now.
I tell you what, their right tackle, Spencer Brown, dispensed justice. I mean, that dude is just flat-backing people. He's crushing people. I think the really interesting thing here is Denver led the league in sacks. They had 63 sacks, set a franchise record for rushing the passer. Yeah. Buffalo led the league in the least number of sacks given up at 14. So here's a strength-on-strength battle. Yeah. But Denver to me is not one of those teams that's just going to line up with 4 down and come after you and get to the quarterback. That's not what they do. No. Vance Joseph, their defense coordinator, has done a great job of bringing 5-man pressures, bringing 6-man pressures, 7-man pressures, 4-man simulated pressure. They do a lot of that stuff. So what they do is they really attack your protection. Sure. It's not so much about we're going to beat your ass one-on-one. It's about attacking your protection, finding out how to create the one-on-one that you like, right? And it's usually Zach Allen inside. He forces you to the outside. Then all of a sudden Nick Benito gets you or Jonathan Cooper gets you. So it's a real chess match to me. And listen, they're so good in Buffalo at protecting their quarterback. It's one of the reasons that Josh Allen, I think he threw 18 interceptions last year. He's at 6 this year. He's been unbelievable, so judicious with the football. And it really comes down to this. Can the Broncos lean into their strength? Can they get those one-on-one matchups? Can they get a free runner at Josh Allen? And if they do, can they get him down? Yeah. Like, that's a whole nother deal, because that dude is 6'4", 250. Like, can you get his butt down? Like, when the quarterbacks outweigh the edge rushers in today's game, it's pretty funny. So, that to me is really the kind of the key matchup. And I'll tell you the other matchup here that's really interesting to me. I think the one advantage the Broncos have in this matchup is special teams. And I know we don't talk about it very often, but Marvin Mims is a great returner. Yeah. Last year, he went up there, had a nice return against Buffalo in a game where the Broncos won in Buffalo. And then look for some fake punt. I think the Broncos understand, listen, we're outmanned a little bit in this matchup.
We might try to steal a possession.
Right. We've got to steal a possession or two. We've got to be able to create a turnover or two. They understand that. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how that O-line versus D-line, that pass rush versus pass protection matchup lines up.
Well, Josh Allen, one of the reasons why obviously he's only been sacked 14 times is his ability to escape. If you get a free hitter coming at him, and their battles with Kansas City, Spagnola's gotten those free hitters to him, usually off the edge with fast guys. But, they bounce off him. Like, they can get to him. They can't, like to your point, it's hard to get him down to the ground. And he's just playing these games right now where it's just balls out. Like, there is no tomorrow. So I'm not worried about protecting myself. I'm not sliding. Like, if I got to run somebody over on 4th and 2, I'm running him over on 4th and 2. And so he just has that ability to do it. And fortunately, he stayed healthy, through these 6 years here where he can still do that.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, what other game you want to hit up?
Well, I mean, what do you – like, we start tomorrow afternoon with the Chargers going to Houston. This Houston offensive line, they commit more penalties, Mark, than anybody I've watched. Like, they're constantly pre-snap penalties. Yeah. Movement, illegal procedure. They're constantly playing behind the sticks. It's plagued them all year. Like, I like the Chargers in this game. I like the fact that you can line up with Slater and Joe Alt against Will Anderson and against, Danielle Hunter, and you're going to get a lot of standoffs with those two tackles. They just don't get beat. They know how to use their length. They got great hands. They lock you up. Like, I can't see a lot of wins on the outside by those guys.
Yeah, you know what? Again, strength-on-strength matchup, because the Houston Texans, the two best kind of tandem of pass rushers, Will Anderson on one side, right, and Danielle Hunter on the other side. And you mentioned the tackles for the Chargers. And I go back, like, this was a tie on the doorknob. Honey, don't come in here. I'm watching Jim Harbaugh talk about offensive line play being the spear, like the tip of the spear when it comes to weapons. And there were a lot of people that were like, oh, you're getting rid of Keenan Allen, and you're getting rid of, what was it, Cat? Mike Williams, and what are you going to do? And Jim Harbaugh is like, no, I got Joe Alt. Joe Alt's tip of the spear, man. This is what we're going to do. We're going to physically wear your ass out. We're set up our play action. Lad McConkey will be fine. Our other guys will be fine. They got Will Dissly, Will Dissly is one of my favorite players. Baldy, he looks like that dude that you'd like walk into a YMCA pickup basketball game and you're like,
he's slam dunking on you.
You're like, oh,
he's dunking on your head.
Yeah, I got the fat father guy with the balding head, and I got him. And then he's doing 360 tomahawks on your ass, and you're like, wait a minute, what happened? Well, so I really like the Chargers in this game, and I'm with you. Something has been off. Their O-line, the penalties, the sacks, the pressures, they have not been able to overcome that all season long. It puts them behind the chains too often, and they haven't been able to, unleash that defense enough to really attack the other person's core, or they attack the other team's quarterback and let that outstanding young secondary work.
It's interesting. I was talking to Deion Sanders is here for this game tomorrow. He's got a lot of Colorado kids. And I was talking to him for a little bit yesterday. And I just asked him, what you would do if you were, running the Cowboys right now. Because there's a lot of questions about what should they do. And he's like, Baldy, like, I'm an old school guy. I played for Jimmy Johnson. I believe in old school mentality. Like you're hearing about this stuff right now in Miami, Mark, where Mike McDaniel, hey, if you're late to a meeting, you're late to a meeting. There was no they got away with all this stuff, right? And it showed up on the field. Like we just talked about Denver and Sean Payton, and we talked about the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. To me, there's only one way to coach this game. We're going to have all these names, all these interviews out there, and it's like basically it's all nonsense. Which guy is going to come in and demand excellence in an old school way? Like this is how it is going to be done. Not the way we're not going on podcasts and talking about what happened on stuff. We're not doing that crap. Right. I just feel like we got two guys back in this game right now in the NFL that got their teams in the playoffs because of how they coach and what they demand from their players.
Yeah. You mentioned Sean Payton, and he and I have been close probably since about 2009. And really interesting. One of the things, culture, you can be a hard ass, right? And you can coach your guys hard and still be a player's coach.
Yeah.
Still be in it for the players. But there's the respect and there's demand. I always talk about two types of fear. There's the biblical sense of fear, which is awesome reverence and respect. You have to have that. And then there's the I'll cut your ass in a heartbeat if you cross the line. Yeah. You've got to have that kind of fear. Like Mike Shanahan had that fear, like awesome respect, awesome reverence. But I knew, like he'd cut you and invite you over for pizza the same night. Like, hey man, like no hard feelings, but you're not good enough anymore. So there was that aspect of what they do. And one of the cool things, Baldy, you probably haven't heard this story, but obviously I just moved to New York, but I've been living in Denver for 27 years. Yeah. So he first comes in, and I've done games in Denver, and the cafeteria is there, and off to the side of the cafeteria is the meeting room where you have your production meetings, okay? And then after you're done with your production meetings, you can go in and you can eat and you can do all that stuff. So I'm sitting in there eating, and there's a contingent of business people from the business office that are coming down there with clients eating, where the players are eating and right. And can I get a picture and stuff? Sean Payton walks in and sees it and says, not on my watch. Yeah. Non-essential. He told the business office, he goes, brown bag it. You're not allowed in our cafeteria. Like this is a sanctuary for our players. They should be able to come in here and eat in their underpants if that's what they feel like doing. Like no more business. Like, and it just things like that. Like he's a hard ass. Right. And you're going to play hard. You're going to practice hard. You're going to prepare hard. But he's got your back. And there is a balance there. And some guys are so busy, trying to be cutesy and trying to be buddies with the players and stuff. And it just that stuff doesn't work, man. As well as I do playing. we're as players, we're children, and we're gonna push the limits, and we're gonna see how far we can push it to see what we get away with, because that's just the way you operate.
Yeah. Let's take let's see what we got. Let's take one more game here. Let's take this Washington Tampa game, Mark, because Baker Mayfield is a guy that I've known since he was at Texas Tech as a walk-on.
Yeah.
And I've always liked Baker. Like, first of all, there's a real joy for the game that kid plays with. He plays. I watched him when he was at Oklahoma warming up. Like, he's out there throwing the ball behind his back. He's ready to go have a good time. He's done all the work, all the hay in the barn. He's ready to go play. And I think, he did something this year that only 9 other quarterbacks have ever done. He threw for over 4,500 yards and over 40 touchdowns. And he did that after, he was run out of Carolina, run out of Cleveland. But he's in a place where he's allowed to be a leader and play his style. And if he throws an interception, it's not because he was a dumbass or just like, he'll come back and make up for it. And I feel like we got 2 quarterbacks in this game and a rookie who's just sensational from his standpoint. Like, he calls the whole game at the line of scrimmage, Mark. This is the NFL now. Like, he's out there. It's not college looking at the sideline. What's Cliff Kingsbury want me to do? He's getting everybody lined up, 2-minute drill. It doesn't matter. Like, he's calling the game at the line of scrimmage. He's got my respect for the way he goes about his business. And Baker has my respect just because I know that he'll cut your carotid artery off every chance he gets. So I was just curious how you looked at this game. If you think that Tampa's beat up in the secondary right now, I'm a little concerned about that. But I love the way Tampa has run the football this year and the emphasis on the run and how good they've been at it.
Okay, 2 things, Tampa's offense. One, you got to understand the metamorphosis that they've gone through as an offensive unit. So they have gone where they had Chris Godwin as their go-to conversion guy. He, breaks his ankle. Mike Evans at the same time pulls a hamstring. And they all of a sudden morph into a Cade Otton-driven offense with Bucky Irvin. Yes. And that kid, Bucky, man, let me just tell you, watching him on film, I did a Tampa game about a month ago. Watching that kid on film, I promise you, as sure as I'm sitting here talking to you, that dude could be a primary slot receiver.
No doubt.
He's that good at hands. He's that good quickness off the ball. He runs routes. He does all those things. And then he runs it from the backfield. He's been amazing. So they morphed into this kind of totally different offense and then morphed back when Mike Irvin came back. And they are so connected. Like, when I sat down with Baker Mayfield, there was like 6 games left in the season. Yeah. And Mike Evans was coming back. And I go, hey, listen, man, Mike Evans. And he goes, I didn't even get the question out, Baldy. He goes, he needs 99.5 yards or 99.5 yards per game to get over 1,000, and we're getting his ass 1,000. I don't even care. And listen, Mike Evans doesn't even care about this. I care about it. Our team cares about it. We're in it. And it's just one of those things that's so
a rallying
cool.
cry, Mark. Yeah. It's a rally. You saw it on the sideline Sunday.
And this guy is so competitive. And last year I was doing a couple of their games, and Dave Canales, who was their offensive coordinator, now the head coach at Carolina, says to me, he goes, Stink, he goes, I'll tell you. He goes, he can play as poorly as he's ever played for a quarter or a quarter and a half. And then he can be brilliant for a half quarter and absolutely eviscerate a defense. Right. Like he's got no conscience about him. He's just like, let's go, man. And like you said, he'll rip your heart out. And then on the flip side, you talked about Jaden Daniels. Well, I spent the first couple of weeks of the season with Jaden Daniels. Man, he wears those Oculus goggles.
Yes.
3 hours a day. So Cliff Kingsbury reads off the play sheet, right? And reads all the plays. So he's got it in his ears. So he spends about 3-4 hours a day on going through the game plan, throwing completions, doing all that stuff. First guy in the building, last guy out of the building. And he's got, he legitimately goes, oh, it's just another game to me. And you know what? I totally buy it. It is just another game. This kid has 4 comebacks in the fourth quarter to win ball games. He had a shootout with Joe Burrow that he won, by the way. And I think they have converted, Baldy. I did it this morning on Breakfast Ball, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. every morning on FS1, the show I host. he did, I think they were 20 of 22 on fourth down conversions, Baldy.
I got it right here, Mark. They were 20 to 23.
20 of 23 on
23.
Fourth down. Like that is so that normally when you go for it on fourth down, man, you're puckered up.
Hey,
man.
you're
like
50-50 at best. At very best, 50-50.
Right. You're like, oh shoot, here we go. Fourth down, can't get a holding call. You're worried about all the things that can go wrong. Man, he is just dealing. And his ability, here's where I think the matchup is interesting for me. And I'm a little bit homer because I'm taking Washington in this game. But I played with Todd Bowles, played at Washington together. I know one thing about Todd Bowles. He's bringing pressure, especially on first down. He loves to pressure you, right? He loves to get you behind the chains. One thing about pressure with a quarterback who can move, when that guy breaks that pressure, he not only is going to get DBs that stop because the threat of the run.
You better not be a man coverage. You better not be a man, I'll tell you that.
They'll get wide open targets. They'll stop covering guys because all of a sudden that threat comes and he's approaching that line of scrimmage. Then he's dishing. Or if you're in man coverage and your back's turned, that dude will take it to the house. He may go 45, 50 on you. So, I think he's the key X factor here. I know they opened up the season in Tampa, against Tampa. They lost that game, but this is a different football team. Both these defensive had some struggles, but I think this game is great. I think it's going to be a shootout. Yeah. And maybe it's my homerism, but I took Washington in this one.
Well, it's interesting. That week one game, I went back and watched it, just see what Todd did. It was 37-14 in favor of Tampa with 2 minutes to go. And he's still bringing a safety Mike blitz. He never stopped. And so Jaden really, he didn't, he got sacked a couple times. But you could tell, the guy, he either used his legs to get out of harm's way. He made some good throws. It wasn't like he just buckled to the pressure. Not at all. Not even close to it. That kind of opened my eyes early in the year when he handled that, because Todd was like, okay, rookie quarterback, let's see what he's got. Let's see what he's making. Yeah. We gave him a test, and I'd say Jaden Daniels from that day on, had the test.
Baldy, I talked to him after, because I did maybe week 3 and week 4 of Washington. Mm-hmm. And I watched him after 1 week fix issues. So there were a couple throws where he had access on the outside with off coverage, right? They're bringing down a safety, they're blitzing, and he's got one-on-one access to the outside with a corner, 9 yards off, and that's his first read, and he pulled it and ran. And he did it on several different, combination routes, where he's running, whatever. He's running flat curl, and where it's wide open. He pulled it a couple times. So I was talking to him about it. He goes, yeah, you know what? They talked to me about that. I talked to Cliff about that. I got to be better. And he just listed 3 or 4. He missed a seam to Luke McCaffrey, I remember, that was open, and he got the right look and he didn't throw it. And he's like, ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen again. I was like, oh, man, that's great. I love the conversation. Yeah. I'm telling you, dude, he did not miss one. If it's open, he's pulling the trigger. To watch his development from week 1 to week 2 to week 3 to week 4, it was damn.
See, he didn't throw an interception, Mark, for the first 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah, it was incredible, man. I tell you what, Washington got themselves one. Obviously going to be the rookie of the year, but really cool to watch what he's been able to do, and he's a salt of the earth, just loves football. He's an awesome kid. He's so much fun to kind of talk to. Yeah. Yeah.
Great kid. Well, look, Mark, we could go on and on and on here. I think we've kind of teed these things up enough to get us all interested in Wildcard Weekend. I'm sure we'll have time next week to kind of revisit some of the things that happened and some of the things that we'll look forward to, man. So,
hey, let me ask you real quick, just real quick. Who you got? Baltimore, Pittsburgh?
I got Baltimore.
You think they cover that spread? It's like a 9.5.
I don't know about the spread, Mark. That's a big number between these two teams. I think you're going to get the best of Pittsburgh. I did the Week 11 game in Pittsburgh. They won that game 18-16.
Yeah.
Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals. He missed a bunch this year.
Yeah.
But in that game, Pittsburgh got 3 turnovers. Nick Herbig got one out of Derrick Henry's hands, coming from the backside. They got good field position. They took the ball away. those turnovers have been trickling. They're still at the top of the league right now with turnovers, but most of them were from earlier in the year. If they can't get that from Lamar or from Henry or somewhere, I think they're going to struggle because their offense just isn't dynamic enough. It's a check down offense. That's what Russell Wilson does. He's not, they don't get explosive plays, Mark.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think Baltimore, I think one of the things we always talk about Pittsburgh's defense, but the last 5 or 6 weeks, Baltimore's had the best defense in football. They all talk about Kyle Hamilton kind of moving from in the box safety to the deep safety, even though he still plays in the box. Obviously, if you got weak side rotation or whatever from that free safety, but their defense is different. I've got Baltimore winning this game. What about Philly? You're a Philly guy. Philly, Green Bay. What do you got in that game?
Well, I like to, I like Philadelphia in the game, Mark. I was in Brazil week 1. I saw Saquon's effect. He had over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns in the first game. I had a feeling he was going to be a special player. He never got runways like he got in that Philly line, behind the Philadelphia line. I got to be, honest. So far, I don't know what Jalen Hurts did today, but he had taken 12 snaps from yesterday.
He was a
game when he got hurt against Washington. He hasn't practiced basically at all. And
they said yesterday he was full participant yesterday.
Okay, all right.
Whatever that means.
Well, whatever. He hasn't really thrown a meaningful football, though, in almost 3 weeks. I don't know what kind of timing he's going to have. He hit a 67-yarder at A.J. Brown against Jair Alexander in that game in Brazil, and it was perfect. He laid it out there just right. If he gets that look again, is he going to lay it out there just right? Or what's going to be his confidence level? So I think it might take a little while to get into a rhythm if he does. But I feel like they can control this game on the ground. And I think defensively, Philadelphia is just so much better than Green Bay's offense right now.
I do too. What's interesting, I always say this about offensive football. When you fall out of rhythm, it's almost impossible to throw yourself back into a rhythm. And that's what I love about Philly. All right, let's line up with our hosses. Let's get in 2 tights. Let's use our big fellas. Let's get Saquon going. Let's run the bubble screen. Let's, dump one off on a swing pass. Let's get rolling. Let's get our quarterback comfortable. And they've got that ability to beat you any way you want to get beat. They can cram it down your throat. They can throw it over your head. But they've got the unique ability to line up and just say, hey, we're going to run, and we know we're going to run. And we're better than you. So anyhow, I love that about them, brother. Hey, guys, make sure you can follow me on Twitter at Mark Schlereth, Breakfast Ball on FS1 every morning, 8 to 10 Eastern, and also my YouTube channel, the Stinkin Truth podcast on YouTube. You can get me there too. Baldy, man, it's always good to be with you, brother.
You got it, Mark. Yeah, have a great weekend, man. Enjoy the action. I'll catch up with you next week, buddy.
Sounds good, my brother. Take care.